مرحبا وأهلا بكم في برنامج داخل واشنطن. معكم مضيفكم روبرت ساتلوف. إن لم تنجح في البداية فحاول مرارا وتكرارا. تلك المقولة الشهيرة تنطبق على السياسة الهجرة في عهد إدارة ترامب الجديدة. بعد أسبوع واحد في البيت الأبيض وقع الرئيس ترامب على أمر تنفيذي لتعزيز الأمن الأمريكي بتشديد القيود على دخول البلاد. وقد علق الأمر التنفيذي تحديدا السماح بدخول الولايات المتحدة لمواطني 7 دول، وأوقف بصورة مؤقتة دخول كل اللاجئين الطالبين لحق اللجوء السياسي، وقلص بمقدار النصف إجمالي عدد اللاجئين الذين تقبلهم الولايات المتحدة كل عام من مختلف دول العالم. أوقف القضاة تنفيذ ذلك الأمر قائلين أن به ظلما للمسلمين. وقد أصدر الرئيس ترامب بعدها أمرا تنفيذيا جديدا أدق تفصيلا. حذفت العراق من قائمة الدول التي يحظر دخول مواطنيها، ويمكن للمسافرين الحاملين لتأشيرات سارية أن يدخلوا إلى البلاد، واللاجئون الذين أقر دخولهم سمح لهم بإنهاء رحلاتهم إلى أمريكا. هل ستكون المحاكم الخطة الجديدة؟ والأهم من ذلك، هل سيجعل أي من هذا النسخة الأكثر تشددا أو النسخة الأكثر تسهيلا أمريكا أكثر أمنا؟ لمناقشة نهج إدارة ترامب حيال أمن الحدود والهجرة وتطوراته، يسرني أن أرحب بخبيرين بهذا الموضوع، وهما مات أوبراين وجي دي جوردن. Welcome back to Dakhel, Washington. Well, in America today, there is no more high-profile policy issue than immigration. And I'm delighted to welcome Matt O'Brien and J.D. Gordon to talk about some of these crucial topics for our Middle Eastern guests. Welcome, gentlemen. So, President Trump has now gone through his second effort at an executive order to identify groups on which to put limits for immigration entry into the United States. He started with a number of countries. So, Matt, why these 6 countries that are now have limits imposed on them? Why these 6 countries do you think have been identified?
Well, these 6 countries were initially identified by the Obama administration as countries where there were problems with extremist terrorism. And I believe that the Trump administration decided to continue with that list because all 6 of the countries are either on the list of failed states or the list of state sponsors of terrorism. So they all represent countries where it's extremely difficult for the United States to do the vetting that it needs in order to decide whether to admit people, either because of the conditions in the government or because of problems with there not being a functioning government.
Interesting. Okay. JD, does that make sense to you?
Yes, that's exactly right. This started with the Obama administration in identifying some problem areas, and during the campaign, Mr. Trump was often quoted about fixing immigration. Well, this is the biggest component, in my view. It's a security issue above all, because we've been attacked in the United States by jihadists. There are problems in Europe with refugees, for instance, coming from some countries in the Middle East and then turning to terrorism. So it's a real issue. And so President Trump has been honest about it, and he's doing something about it.
So, JD, you referred to attacks the United States has suffered because of jihadists. I've heard some people say, well, okay, this group of countries is certainly reasonable, but why not the countries that actually gave us September 11th, like Saudi Arabia or Egypt, where the attackers came from? Why shouldn't there be a broader list?
Well, that's an excellent question, and my response to that, I've been asked many times too, is that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, even though Saudi Arabia had 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11, there are billions and billions of dollars that go back and forth between both countries. If you talk about the energy sector with oil, if you talk about the defense sector with weapons. There's a lot of strong economic ties between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. Egypt is another strong partner with the United States, 90 million people, and we're close. Our administration is close to President al-Sisi. So yeah, there are issues with those countries too, but we don't have the same type of important relationships, say with Libya, Sudan, Somalia. We don't have those strong bonds at all. So that's why it's a different case.
Okay. And Matt, does that sound like a reasonable argument from the position of immigration reform?
Yes, it's very reasonable. I mean, the fact is that we've had long-standing relationships with both Egyptian and Saudi security agencies, and it's actually possible to get information from them to use in vetting. So I think that this was a first step to try and identify the countries where we have the most significant problems with security vetting, and I think the administration will probably move from there.
Now, the other piece of the executive order that's gotten, I think, less publicity, but is still a very important initiative is temporarily suspending refugee entry to the United States and lowering the threshold on refugees. And how do you connect that to the national security objectives that the president is trying to achieve?
Well, the president wants to keep America safe. I want to keep America safe. Most Americans want to keep America safe. We also have a humanitarian nature about us where we want to admit refugees into America. So the issue is, what is the balance? And right now we've seen the balance has not gone in our favor for people being killed by jihadists who sometimes come as refugees. If you look at the Sarnia brothers who came from Chechnya, a part of Russia, they blew up the Boston Marathon. The Pulse nightclub, a shooter in Orlando, killed 49 people. His father was from Afghanistan. If you look at the San Bernardino shooters, they have ties to Pakistan. So we have people that come into America from countries where there's a major problem with jihadists, radical Islamist terrorism. They come into America and kill people. Well, we have to stop that.
And do you think that the numbers that we are now considering for the overall limits on refugees are appropriate?
Well, I think there are too many, frankly. The world is 7.3 billion people. America's 320 million. And if you combine America with the European Union, it's still less than 1 billion. However, the richest countries with the best opportunities and the most freedom are the United States and European Union. So people want to go from Africa, from the Middle East. You can't blame them. I mean, my ancestors came to the United States from other countries too. Just about everybody did, unless you were a Native American, which I'm 3% Polynesian, by the way. But today, we have to put limits on how many people come in, just because of the security threat for one, but also it's economics. We can't take the whole world.
And in terms of refugees, does that, putting these strict limits, does that make sense for you, Matt, as well?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. By definition, refugees are the people who are the hardest to vet because they're coming from countries where there is internal strife, which often means that you don't have a functioning government that you can appeal to for assistance in trying to find out the identity of the people who are asking to come in and any background that they might have. So it's very important to only bring refugees in, and for that matter, political asylees in numbers that are adequate to give the government sufficient time to do what it needs to do.
So far, we've now seen two sets of judges say no to President Trump's executive orders. First, the original executive order, and more recently, the second executive order, basically citing the idea, in their view, that these orders unfairly target a certain religion, namely Islam, Muslims. Do you gentlemen think that this is a reasonable judicial decision, or is politics at play? Matt?
I think politics is at play. I mean, these are particularly politically correct decisions. I think that they ignore about 150 years of precedent that indicate that the president has, under what's called the plenary power doctrine, almost unlimited power to direct immigration in the way that he feels is appropriate for national security.
A lot of politics here?
Yeah, it's all entirely politics, I would say. But That said, that's how the country is built, where we have a separation of powers. We have three equal branches of government: the executive branch, which is the White House; the legislative branch, the Congress; and the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, and courts below them. That's how it's set up. It's an equal arrangement where all three have the same amount of power. So even though it's unfortunate, it's part of how America is built.
And so what strategy do you think the administration is going to adopt now that courts have struck down for the second time an executive order?
Well, I think what the administration needs to do is, when there is a settled and stable Supreme Court that's not prone to ideological deadlock, it needs to present this, because that's how our system works. Things go to the Supreme Court for final resolution. And the fact is that there's about 150 years of precedent that says that as a sovereign nation, the United States is entitled to determine who comes here and for how long they stay. And this appears by the courts to be an attempt to extend the protections of the First Amendment, not just the First Amendment, but all of the Bill of Rights, to people who have had no prior contact to the United States. And that's problematic for a variety of reasons.
So basically, wait until Justice Gorsuch is approved, get a majority on the court, time it so that you can get a vote that upholds the president's executive order. Does that sound like a strategy to you?
I think that's a great strategy. I think Matt is right. I think when Justice Gorsuch becomes a member, should he get confirmed, and I think he will be, the conditions in the Supreme Court will be right to back President Trump on some of these decisions.
Okay, when we come back, gentlemen, we're going to expand our conversation from the issue of the executive orders to the broader discussion, which is a hot button political issue of immigration, legal, illegal, and where America is going in its open borders to the world writ large. In just a moment. Our guests today include Matt O'Brien. Matt is Director for Research at the Federation for American Immigration Reform, an advocacy group calling for reduced levels of immigration to the United States. Over the past 20 years, Matt has held a wide variety of positions focusing on immigration issues. Prior to joining FAIR, he served as the Chief of the National Security Division at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. In that position, he was responsible for procedures to protect the legal immigration system from terrorists, foreign intelligence operatives, and other national security threats. In addition, Matt has extensive experience as a private bar attorney. He received his bachelor's degree from Johns Hopkins University and his law degree from the University of Maine School of Law. Sitting to his right is J.D. Gordon. J.D. is a foreign policy, national security, and strategic communications expert who has written and spoken widely on immigration and terrorism-related issues. A former Pentagon spokesman under Secretaries of Defense Donald Rumsfeld and Robert Gates, he served as a senior advisor to the Trump presidential campaign. In addition, J.D. is a contributing columnist to major news outlets such as Fox News, the Daily Caller, and the Hill newspaper. A native of New York City, J.D. is a career Navy public affairs officer and retired commander, in which capacity he was the on-scene spokesman for numerous international newsworthy events over a 20-year active duty career. So, gentlemen, let's look at the broader immigration question. Part of this problem is legal immigration. How much? Part of the problem is illegal immigration. What do we do with the millions of people here, undocumented, without appropriate papers? So, on that second issue, where do you think the administration is heading? What mix of legalization, deportation, something between the two? What's the strategy? J.D.?
Well, I think that President Trump has made his positions very clear on the campaign trail, that we have too many people coming in the country who we have no idea who they are, and many of them come from across the southern border from Mexico, for instance. But about 40% of the people who come and stay and become illegal actually overstay their visas. So people get visas from all around the world, and we can't track when they've gone home in many cases where they don't show up. So both of those are a problem. He's talked about a wall with Mexico. That's been one of the main platforms of his presidential campaign. So that's happening now. He's getting the funding to construct a wall with Mexico to keep people out, because we have over 11 million people here illegally.
And do you foresee a large-scale deportations of these illegal aliens, or do you see another path to address the problem? Matt?
I always dislike the term mass deportations because I think it's a political term that's used to elicit a certain type of reaction. I think what the Trump administration is trying to do is restore the rule of law to immigration enforcement. And I think that was not the standard under the Obama administration. So I believe what you're seeing is the Trump administration simply exercising the authorities that already exist in the Immigration and Nationality Act. Now, the president has indicated that he wants to see the rule of law restored before he considers any kind of program for people who may already be here.
And when all is said and done, in the end, do you believe that the majority of that 11 million will end up having some way to stay here over the long run, or do you believe the majority will go back to their home countries?
I believe the majority will probably end up staying, but certainly a lot more will be deported, I believe, than in past years, particularly anybody who's caught for something illegal, convicted of a crime. What we've seen too often in America is people who actually even get deported coming back and committing crimes. And there is a thing in America called sanctuary cities, where some cities like San Francisco, for instance, have said, we're going to challenge the federal government and not even take any action against people here illegally. Well, that's created problems, and some of the people here illegally have killed American citizens. This is horrific. There was an issue for a woman who was killed in San Francisco walking out with her family and just killed by an illegal immigrant. There was a law, Kate's Law, that we've talked about in America to make sure we can deport people who engage in crimes like that and kill American citizens and not have these sanctuary cities and restrict their funding from the government.
And do you expect the government the central government, the federal government in our system, to retaliate against sanctuary cities, withhold federal monies, that sort of thing?
I do, and I think they need to. You can't have two systems of law here. You can't have a federal law and then city laws that say, well, we're going to ignore the federal laws. That is anarchy.
Matt, let me ask you about legal immigration. What do you think is a reasonable approach to numbers of legal immigrants to come into the country, and how should the federal government determine this? What is the sort of the process, the thinking that should govern our approach to legal immigration?
It should be a system that works for the American people. And right now, it's really a system that's more or less based on nepotism. About 90% of the immigration to the United States is based on family relationships, which means that rather than the people and the government of the United States selecting who is going to be able to come here, broad classes of people are self-selecting. What really needs to happen is there needs to be a merit-based system or something similar to it that allows the U.S. government to recruit the best and brightest from all over the world based on the needs of the U.S. labor market and other needs the country may have.
So to shift from a family reunification system to what the labor market determines would be in the best interest?
Yes, right now about 3% of overall immigration happens because of labor needs, and most of that is driven specifically by employers, which means that occasionally you have employers exploiting the system in order to get lower cost labor. What should really be happening is that the overall American economy should be dictating how many people we have coming here and when they come.
So is there a number, or is that number in mind, for example? Is it necessarily lower or higher than current immigration, or is it really driven by what the economy will bear in this idea?
I think it should be a lower overall number. The number that the Federation for American Immigration Reform likes is the number that was suggested by the Jordan Commission a number of years ago, which did a long-term study of America's immigration laws and the immigration patterns. And so we think that roughly 300 to 500,000 people per year provides a number of people that are sufficient to meet any economic needs the country may have at the time, but also a small enough number to allow people to assimilate and effectively become part of the American community.
And just so our viewers know by comparison, what's the current number approximately?
The current number is 1 million or more a year over all of the immigrant categories.
So you're suggesting about a third to a half of the current number?
Yes.
So JD, this entire discussion that we've been having about executive orders and stuff, it's a temporary issue, 120 days for this, that sort of thing. In the broader scope, Where do you think this debate is going among Republicans, for example, and among the nation at large, and how high on a priority level do you think this is for the president?
Well, I think it's a very high priority for the president. It's one of the main things he talked about while campaigning across the United States. It's one of the reasons he was elected by the American people. I think the country is waking up to the fact that the world is over 7 billion people, and so many people want to come, but both due to security reasons and economic reasons, we just can't keep taking people. And so you have to make tough decisions, and we have to balance our humanitarian ideals to offer a place to refugees, to migrants, but we have to do it in a more smart way.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid that we're going to have to bring it to a close here. This is a fascinating discussion about a really important topic. Thank you both very much for joining us on Dakhel, Washington.
Thank you.
بهذا نصل إلى نهاية هذه الحلقة من برنامج داخل واشنطن. إذا كانت لديكم أي استفسارات أو تعليقات حول هذه الحلقة، وخاصة حول أثر حظر السفر على رأيكم في إدارة ترامب، أرجو أن تراسلوني مباشرة على عنوان البريد الإلكتروني التالي insidewashington@elhura.com. معكم روبرت ساتلوف. شكرا لكم وإلى اللقاء.